The first thing that broke my heart wasn't the betrayal. It was the laughter. I heard it through my phone late at night, when the house was quiet and my thoughts were loud. A cousin had posted a short video, barely 15 seconds, but it was enough to make my chest tighten. There was music playing, glasses clinking, people talking over one another in that warm, careless way families do when they feel safe and proud. My parents were right there in the center of the frame. My mother was wearing the blue dress she saved for special occasions. My father stood beside her, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, relaxed, satisfied, almost relieved. The caption read, "Finally, things are turning around for our family." I wasn't there. No invitation. No call. Not even a message saying, "We're celebrating something small." I replayed the video again, then again, as if watching it long enough would reveal a hidden explanation. Maybe it was spontaneous. Maybe they thought I was busy. I had always been good at finding excuses for other people's choices, especially when it came to my family. I placed the phone face down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The fan hummed softly above me, steady and indifferent. I remember thinking how strange it was that something so simple, a few seconds of laughter, could make me feel so invisible. Growing up, I was the understanding daughter. The one who didn't demand attention. The one who believed that love didn't need to be loud to be real. If my parents leaned on me, I told myself it was because they trusted me. If they asked me to wait, to sacrifice, to be patient, I did, because that's what good daughters do. That night, I told myself this was just another one of those moments. Still, something felt off. The laughter didn't sound shared. It sounded earned. Like relief after a burden had been lifted. Like celebration after a problem had been solved. And I hadn't been part of the solution. I opened my messages, scrolling back through old conversations with my parents. Normal check-ins. Casual questions. Nothing unusual. Nothing that explained the distance between their joy and my quiet room. I typed a message to my mother, "Looks like fun," then deleted it. I didn't want to sound needy. I didn't want to interrupt their happiness with my questions. So instead, I smiled to myself, the way I always did when something hurt but didn't feel serious enough to mention. I whispered, "It's fine," like a prayer I'd been saying my whole life. But my body knew before my mind did. My chest felt heavy. My stomach tight. Sleep didn't come easily. When it finally did, my dreams were restless, filled with half-familiar rooms and doors that wouldn't open. The next morning, I woke up with that quiet ache still sitting in me. I went through my routine, shower, coffee, work emails, pretending the video hadn't affected me. On the outside, everything looked normal. On the inside, something had shifted slightly, like a hairline crack forming under pressure. I told myself families are complicated. That love isn't perfect. That trust means not asking too many questions. I didn't know yet that my name was already carrying a weight I never agreed to bear. I didn't know that the laughter I heard wasn't just celebration, but relief built on secrecy. All I knew was this. For the first time in my life, I felt like something important had happened without me, and that feeling, quiet as it was, would not go away. The envelope arrived on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that doesn't feel important until it changes everything. It was wedged between grocery store flyers and a utility bill, plain and white, with my name printed neatly across the front. No return address I recognized. I almost set it aside, thinking I'd open it later, after dinner, after I finished pretending my life was simple. Something made me open it right away. I stood in the hallway, shoes still on, as I slid the paper out and began to read. At first, the words didn't register. They felt formal, distant, like a language meant for someone else. Loan approval confirmation. Account number. Monthly payment schedule. Then I saw it. Borrower, my full name. My heart skipped, then started racing, as if my body had sensed danger before my mind caught up. I read the page again, slower this time. The amount wasn't small. It was life-shifting. The kind of number you remember for years. I leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. No background noise. No voices. Just the sound of my own breathing, uneven and sharp. I hadn't taken a loan. I knew that with a certainty that settled deep in my bones. I was careful with money, always had been. Careful because I had learned early that financial safety was fragile, and that once it broke, it took years to repair. My hand started to tremble as I searched for an explanation. Maybe it was a mistake. A typo. A stranger with a similar name. But the address was mine. The phone number was mine. Even the signature at the bottom looked like mine, close enough to fool anyone who didn't know how slowly, how deliberately, I signed my name. That evening, I called my mother. I didn't plan a speech. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even say the word loan at first. I just asked, softly, "Mom, did you sign anything using my name?" There was a pause on the line. Not confusion. Not surprise. Recognition. "Oh," she said lightly, like I'd reminded her of something small. That. My chest tightened. She explained it the way people explain things they've already justified to themselves. They needed help. It was temporary. They planned to handle it before I even noticed. It wasn't a big deal. "You're responsible," she added, her tone warm, almost proud. "We knew you'd understand." Understand. That word hurt more than if she'd yelled at me. I asked why no one told me. She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "We didn't want to stress you. And honestly, you're always so calm about these things." Calm. As if my silence had been consent. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the phone long after the screen went dark. My thoughts felt tangled, overlapping, shock, disbelief, a strange sense of shame I couldn't explain. I cried, but quietly. The kind of crying that doesn't seek comfort. Tears slid down my face as I stared at the floor, replaying every moment I had trusted them without question. The celebration video made sense now. The laughter wasn't joy. It was relief. They had solved a problem using my name, my future, my stability, and celebrated without me. That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the house, realizing how unsafe something can feel once you see it clearly for the first time. By morning, my tears had dried. My voice, when I practiced speaking to myself, sounded steady. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something inside me had changed. The daughter who believed love meant endless understanding had quietly stepped aside. In her place stood someone new, still gentle, still kind, but no longer unaware. I didn't confront them again. Not because I was afraid, but because something in me understood that words would only give them space to explain, soften, and rearrange the truth until it no longer resembled what had actually happened. I had spent most of my life accepting carefully packaged explanations. This time I wanted facts. So I chose silence. At first, it felt unnatural. My instinct had always been to talk things through, to repair tension quickly, to make sure everyone was comfortable, even if I wasn't. But silence did something unexpected. It slowed everything down. It gave me room to breathe and think without being interrupted by guilt or obligation. I called the bank. I listened more than I spoke. I asked neutral questions. I took notes. Dates, amounts, documents. Each detail felt like a small stone added to a growing weight I was finally able to see clearly. The loan had been planned, not rushed. Applications submitted, follow-ups made, approvals received. My name had been used with confidence, like someone borrowing a coat they fully expected to return before I noticed it was missing. I requested copies of everything. When the documents arrived, I spread them out across my kitchen table. Page after page, my identity reduced to lines of ink. I studied the signatures carefully. Close enough to pass. Different enough that, if I'd signed them myself, I would have remembered. This wasn't an accident. It was a decision made over time. In the days that followed, I went to family dinners. I answered calls. I smiled politely. No one mentioned the loan. No one asked how I was doing. Their comfort rested on my continued quiet, and they seemed confident it would last. I watched them differently now. I noticed how my mother avoided certain topics. How my father spoke about money with forced optimism. How easily they changed the subject when responsibility came too close. They weren't cruel people. That truth made everything harder. They were ordinary, flawed, afraid, and willing to borrow peace from my future to secure their present. Understanding that didn't excuse what they'd done, but it did clarify something important: this wasn't about love. It was about entitlement. I consulted a financial advisor. Then a legal professional. Not to threaten, not to punish, but to understand my options. Knowledge grounded me. Every answer replaced fear with clarity. No dramatic confrontations followed. No raised voices. I didn't post online. I didn't gather allies. I simply stopped protecting them from consequences they had chosen. Time passed. Days turned into weeks. And slowly, the silence began to speak for itself. Banks don't like confusion. They don't like unanswered questions or mismatched signatures. They especially don't like it when the person whose name is on the papers calmly asks for verification. The calls started going to them instead of me. I wasn't there to hear those conversations, but I could imagine the shift, the unease, the tightening chest, the realization that my quiet compliance had ended. Through it all, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just a steady sense of alignment. For the first time, my actions matched my worth. I wasn't acting out of anger. I wasn't trying to teach anyone a lesson. I was simply choosing not to disappear for other people's comfort anymore. And in that choice, the truth had room to surface on its own. The hardest part wasn't letting go of trust. It was realizing how much strength had been waiting for me the moment I stopped explaining myself. The call came late in the evening, just as the sky outside my window was fading into a quiet blue. I was making tea, moving slowly, deliberately, the way I had learned to do when my emotions needed space to settle. My phone rang. When I saw my father's name on the screen, I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel anger either. I felt prepared. I answered calmly. His voice was different, smaller somehow. Stripped of the confidence I had heard my entire life. He didn't begin with questions or explanations. He began with fear. "They're asking about the loan," he said. "The bank. They want clarification." I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes, listening. I let him speak without interrupting. For once, I didn't rush to fill the silence. He told me they hadn't expected this. That they assumed things would stay simple. That they thought they had more time. Each sentence revealed what had always been true: they never believed my name carried weight outside the family. I waited until he finished. "I didn't do anything," I said gently. "I just answered honestly when I was asked." There was a long pause. Then his voice broke. "We never meant to hurt you." I believed him, and still, I didn't step back into the role of forgiveness without accountability. Belief didn't mean surrender. "I was hurt," I replied. "Not because of the loan. Because I wasn't given the choice." That was the moment everything shifted. Not dramatically. Quietly. In the weeks that followed, things unraveled the way they naturally do when truth is no longer managed. Meetings were scheduled. Documents were corrected. Responsibility found its proper place. I stayed respectful. I showed up when needed. I spoke clearly and briefly. No accusations. No emotional speeches. Just boundaries, steady and calm. My parents changed too, slowly, awkwardly. Conversations became careful. Apologies came without excuses. They no longer spoke for me or over me. Distance grew, not as punishment, but as protection. And within that distance, I found something I hadn't realized I was missing. Peace. I rebuilt what had been shaken. My financial standing. My sense of safety. But more importantly, my relationship with myself. I stopped explaining why I deserved honesty. I stopped earning respect through silence. One afternoon, my father called again. His voice was steadier this time. "I should have asked," he said. "I should have respected you as an adult." I thanked him. Not because it erased the past, but because it acknowledged it. I didn't return to the way things were before. I didn't need to. Some relationships don't end. They evolve when we stop sacrificing ourselves to keep them comfortable. Today, my life is quieter. Clearer. Built on choices I make with open eyes and steady hands. I learned that love without boundaries invites misuse. But love with self-respect creates balance. And that balance, earned, not demanded, is the most powerful form of justice there is.